Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis, your host. Today we have a very special guest, especially in these times where these things must be considered, where they must be addressed. Ted Griffith is a 40-year communications and public affairs professional who has helped senior executives in business, government, politics, media, and nonprofits to deliver persuasive messages. As president of the Fixers Group, his team has managed issues in such sectors as energy, water and wastewater, healthcare, municipal and provincial governments, agriculture, finance, mining, and retail. There's not a place he hasn't touched. The firm is committed to bringing the art and science of persuasion to the clients in communication. Welcome to Politics Done Right, Ted. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Alberto. Thank you for having me. This is a great opportunity.
Actually, look, I must confess that I didn't get through the entire of your book, but I went through some of the synopsis, and It is a topic that we cover here at Politics Done Right, day in and day out. And having a book of this nature that itemizes as it does, I think it is an excellent thing. So let's go ahead and start with your entry. Why did you write the book?
Well, I'd say it was pulling
beforehand. I want to let folks know, and I'm sorry about this. Mm-hmm. The title of the book that Ted wrote is "Arc of Theater of Lies." Correct?
Theater of Lies.
Theater of Lies.
We live in a theater of lies.
And Isn't that true?
You know, as I was doing the research on this book, because as a communicator, I was over the years just frustrated about how people were making decisions based on lies and information, and letting their opinions be based on lies and information. And this is the book I've always wanted to write. I've written a lot over many years, but I just wanted to spend some time and go, and certainly, the COVID pandemic informed part of this. Is that people were deciding not to get vaccinated, and and saying there's too much personal input in their lives, but this was causing people to die, and so people were making decisions based on lies and misinformation that are actually affecting their health. And I found lots more evidence of that in the process of writing the book. And so I gave it the title "Theater of Lies" because what I found is that the producers of lies and misinformation use the same tools that producers in Hollywood, television, and theater use. There's a villain. There's a problem that has to be solved. There's barriers to overcome. And the stakes keep rising and rising and rising until nobody else but me or others can fix it. And those are the things that get into our, we're used to those stories and believing them. We go into a theater, we suspend disbelief, we enjoy the show. But it's being all around us now in how people are communicating with us, and they're using those tools to manipulate us.
Now, let me first, let's go ahead. You're in Toronto, Canada right now. Yep. And living here in the United States, I know we are pretty close to each other, and we get cross national news, etc. I watch Canadian broadcasting every so often, etc. But there is a certain cancer that has evolved here in the United States. I don't think you guys have ever seen it in Canada. Enlighten me if I'm wrong. I don't think we've seen it in most countries in the Western world.
Well, I would disagree with you there.
Thank you.
I think that America is certainly can be seen as the crucible of it right now, and maybe the most at stake. I mean, going into the 2024 election, democracy's at stake. I mean, as a Canadian, growing up, and I was around American influences all my life. My father worked for an American corporation, American news coming across from Buffalo all the time. The thought that democracy is on the ballot in America in 2024 is astounding. But it has come into Canada. It has come into the UK. Look what happened in Brexit,
right?
Where it was the yes side and the no side there. We're passing lines back and forth to manipulate people. So no, it's not. I mean,
so in other words, you're telling me it's much more prevalent than I would see it. Living in this morass here in the United States, it just seems like it's all encompassing. From your research, I think you're telling me that no, you're seeing this, or you've seen this all over.
It's all over the world. Absolutely all over the world. I mean, and one of the problems is you get from the theater of lies to the rule of lies. Mm-hmm. And that's what you've got in China, and you've got in Russia and other areas where...
Explain the difference. I think that is a very good concept that you just gave there. The differences that you just poured, the theater of law, the rule of lies.
Well, we live in a theater of lies today. And that is that so much of what we see is a lie or misinformation, and is produced to manipulate us. But when you get into the rule of lies, that means if you challenge the lies, you go to jail. And that's what happens in China. That's what happens in Russia. In Russia, for example, with the Ukrainian invasion, the war in Ukraine, Putin passed a law that said you couldn't use the term war.
War. Yes, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. In China, the first doctor that found COVID-19 was put in jail because he talked about it. That's what I call the rule of lies. Okay. So when literally you go from, okay, we're being influenced by lies, which is where we are now, to saying, no, this is the truth. This is what you say. And if you don't say that, you go to jail. That's the rule of lies.
Now, interestingly, like you said, you're looking in from Canada to the United States. And I think you just said, and I'm going to go back to the tenet of your book in a second, but I want to get this straight. You've seen this migration of this excessive amount of lies and misinformation starting to migrate across the border as well?
Absolutely. And it's on both sides of, using an American term, both sides of the aisle, liberals, conservatives, Republicans, Democrats. There's either complete baffle gab. I mean, and George Orwell talked about this, 60 years ago with Politics in the English Language, how, political language is designed to manipulate because it says things that don't mean anything. I can say I'm fighting for democracy. Well, what does that mean? Because democracy means different things to different people. Mm-hmm. That's part of the problem with misinformation and lies. That sometimes it's just not a lie, but it's using words that mean one thing to me, mean another thing to you, but you think I mean what you want me to believe. That's part of the problem that we're dealing with. Is that here we've got a sort of our opposition or prime minister in waiting, he may feel he is, calls Canada broken. Mm-hmm. Yet every poll, every survey, every study shows Canada among the 1, 2, 3, or 4th best country in the world.
Right.
Well, if we're broken, we're doing pretty well. Are there things wrong that needs to be fixed? Of course. But that's what lies and misinformation do. They take something and I call it, it's like, this is how hyperbole works, right? I say something's broken. I say things, and if they're broken, they're either broken or fixed. That's binary thinking. And that's what we get a lot of now, a lot more of. And we saw it in COVID-19. We had our own trucker convoy go across the country and surround our Parliament Hill for 3 weeks.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. That was worldwide news. Based on misinformation of COVID, based on misinformation of even how our political system works. They wanted our governor general to throw the prime minister out, which she actually has no power to do. No, there's no legislative power in the world like that. So for in Canada, so lots of lies and misinformation, and a lot of it comes down to, again, it's a signal that you're being lied to, or at very least manipulated, when somebody presents you with binary options. This is right, this is wrong. This is left, this is right. This is vaccines are bad, vaccines are good. We need to get into more of understanding and debate, and be able to debate on nuances, on in the gray area. And now I'll say it's on both sides of a call this left-right thinking binary, is on the left, if you bring something up, you get into cancel culture. Oh, you can't talk about that. So you get canceled. On the right, you get ostracized and beat up and doxxed, and all sorts of terrible things can happen if you dare to ask the question, to ask the question. It's like, I kind of feel like we live in a world where there's a matriarch or a patriarch sitting at the head of our family dinner table.
I think there is. Actually, I think there is. But before I get into that, because I want to explore these things with you. But before we get into that, I want to get some of the context of your writing.
Yes.
Because a lot of how the things that you're talking about, it sounds very American. And in following both Canadian and American news, I wonder about the let's say the symmetry. In other words, it is really, really bad here. The cancel culture, the ostracization, the doxing. I mean, it's very, very bad here. I haven't seen that at least reported in Canada. So I guess I'm asking if is your book, let's say, mostly for this major audience here in America, which I think suffers at this point in our history most of that problem.
Well, I'm going to go back to the fact that America doesn't suffer most of this problem. It is everywhere. I cite Canadian examples in the book. I cite American examples, British, Australian, Chinese, Russian, Japanese. There are this issue is around the world. Let's not forget that in 1944, Japanese people died for their emperor, because they believed he was a god.
Right. Correct. Yes.
So
that's how we got kamikazes and everything else. Right.
Okay. That's a belief in a lie.
Very true.
Right. Absolute. Where they cost millions of lives. Right. So it's not an American problem. I think Americans have gotten better at it. Like there's a line repeated in the book that simply says lies work. And when people think there's a conspiracy theory of people getting together and doing plans, they go, no, they just know that lies work. And in the business world, in marketing and communications, if something works, you repeat it. Why invent something new? Why, if lies are more effective than truth to get people to persuade to do what you want them to do?
Why is that?
Well, the key that I found is that I put lies and facts in the same bucket. I call them proof points. Okay. Because they play on our biases. They play on what I call emotional resonance. So if the speaker, whether it's me or a presidential candidate or a business person, is talking, and that what they're talking about resonates with you emotionally, the proof points you use, whether it's lies or misinformation or facts, that it simply confirms the decision you've already made. That's
there you go.
Key is that we don't use facts to inform us. We use facts and lies to confirm what we already believe.
Now, I want to postulate something. Have you ever heard of the Powell memo?
Yes. Is that the
It's a memorandum written in the 1960s by American justice. I think he was the lawyer for the Chamber of Commerce here in America, and he eventually was ascended to the Supreme Court as a Supreme Court justice. But the idea behind this memo was that progressives were taking hold in America. People were getting smarter, wondering why the business world could have so much power based on what the average American citizen does. And the idea was that the schools, the institutions had to be infiltrated to make sure that we didn't turn against business in effect. So it was a pretty long letter that pretty much got implemented in the United States. The formation of the Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute, and a lot of these other think tanks that give plausibility to what I think you would justifiably call lies. And I guess what I'm saying, it seemed to have come from you asked why the lies, or I asked why the lies. It seemed to have always come from the corporate perspective. In other words, to use our intrinsic vulnerabilities and otherwise to make their points. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's It's true. I mean, in the business world, we simply call it market research. What are the points that are going to engage people? And my most simple example is if I am selling home alarm systems,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to talk a lot about rising crime rates.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, you nailed it. You nailed it. Yeah.
So and the rising in your neighborhood. So if I'm living in Toronto and I'm trying to sell them in Toronto, I'm going to talk about Toronto statistics going up, and or things that look like Toronto that maybe aren't true. And so it's a long established pattern. There's no question, and I do say because it works. And it's not so bad if somebody's selling home security systems.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad thing to have a home security system. And if I get a little manipulated by thinking crime rates are rising, it's not a crime. Okay. But if I'm choosing my government,
mm-hmm.
If I'm saying that, I'm not a racist,
mm-hmm.
when in fact I do and say and have racist thoughts all the time,
mm-hmm.
because if I'm, I mean, it was only in 1965 that Canada lost its last segregated school.
Oh, really?
Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. We had segregated lunch counters in Halifax, which was the center of the Black population.
Right. I know. Yeah.
Canada.
The migration. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so, as I say, we don't hold up our hands so well. Our fight today in Canada is the truth of Indigenous residential schools and the damage that they've done, the children that died in them, and how many died, and what's true and what's not true. And they're literally, papers written on all sides of this argument. So we were still there, okay, based on the fact that race, which is also a lie. Okay, it's a human construct that we've created. Okay, that says, and that goes right back to the 1452 with an author who talked about how Africans were basically degenerates,
right,
and needed Christian help to save them. And so we enslaved them by making sure they were low on the totem pole. They needed our help, so we were doing them benefit. Which you heard just last year from Ron DeSantis, that the slaves learned skills.
Yes.
500 years later, same message.
It's amazing. You know what? It is amazing. You brought. I mean, I like the way you think, because I have this term now called antiseptic slavery. My term. Mm-hmm. Antiseptic slavery.
I like
where I said we're all slaves now. It used to look like me, now it looks like all of us. We're all slaves to the corporate state, the corporations. And I give in a couple of my books, I give the examples why I use that term. Now, I think in you pointing out and tying DeSantis to a 500-year construct, it's powerful. And I think it's essential that we see these similarities, how it has migrated up the fault. And actually, a book like yours that distributes and exact how lies happens, I think it is what we need right now. So please,
thank you for that, because the book has 3 parts to it. And because it's called Theater of Lies, I called them acts: Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, like a 3-act play. And the first act was actually what I started with, which was simply the question: why do we believe lies, and why do we repeat them to others? Those 2 fundamentals. And I go back to, the book starts with the first chapter is, in the beginning there were lies. And let's talk about, Adam and Eve and the tree of knowledge. Don't eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge. And the serpent, the devil, saying, you should have that apple, Eve. Okay. If there was ever a clearer message that says, don't have knowledge, call something the tree of knowledge and say, don't eat from it. And then if you do, you're cast out.
Right.
That was the first, I would call it, there's many, many lies in the world beforehand, but that's the one that's written right in the Bible, sort of on page 1. After, in the beginning, then there is this: if you find knowledge,
right,
if you are curious,
right,
Remember the other cliche that's out there, which is actually a Shakespearean term: curiosity killed the cat.
Yes, yes, yes.
All these messages from the Bible to Shakespeare to others, which says, don't ask questions. That's dangerous. Okay. And it's the people in power or people trying to acquire power. Well, now I've gone past, not even just don't ask questions. If you ask questions, you're gone. You're out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's the fracture you're seeing in between the Republicans and the Democrats in general in the United States, and the fracture you're seeing in the Republican Party between the MAGA Republicans and the so-called traditional Republicans is how dare can you question these things? But it's because, I mean, I even start with the fundamentals, which are, some people call them benign lies, but I call them they're teaching points.
Mm-hmm.
I just bring this up that we're all brought up with this fact that, the sun rises in the morning and it sets at night. Okay. You see it every day. It's on our phones. It's on the newscasts. Sun comes up now, sun comes down there. Yes. But that's not actually what happens.
Right. It's a rotation of the earth. Yeah.
Our position on the earth rotates away towards the sun and then away from it. Okay.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that we need to stop saying sunrise and sunset, but it's a teachable moment to say what you are seeing may not be true.
Mm-hmm.
Because we get this all the time. Well, I saw it for myself. I've been to Africa. I've seen, the slums in Africa, and they're poor and they're starving and they're ignorant. And, why would you want more of them here? I've seen it myself. Well, that's not necessarily true. Okay. Just because you've seen it doesn't make it true. Okay. So another thing that we do is we take a single point of data, even something that I've seen or something that I've read, and we use what I call silly putty logic. Mm-hmm. We take that and we stretch it all the way across. Remember that silly putty toys?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we stretch it to fit a point. And part of that problem is where our traditional media comes in. And that is because what traditional media does is they don't talk data, they talk news. And news is something that's by definition rare.
Mm-hmm.
It's dog bites man is not news. Man bites dog is news. Okay?
Right.
Now, just because a man bites a dog doesn't mean that all men bite dogs.
Right.
And this is what happens in the mainstream news. I saw it. We saw it in the most pertinent time was when I was writing the book, was when vaccines were coming out for COVID. And if there was any adverse reaction to a COVID vaccine, the news was right on it.
Right.
Okay. Now. And the people, there's problems. Well, if you know which I have worked in the healthcare industry and know the protocols, is that if you take a vaccine, any drug for that matter, and have some sort of reaction, that is reported to, in your case, it would be the CDC and and your health authorities. Here it would be Health Canada, and it's investigated. Mm-hmm. And even if if you had a vaccine and you slipped on a piece of ice and fell on the ground, that would still be reported as an incident based on the vaccine. And then there'd be a complete report and they'd say, no, the vaccine didn't have anything to do with this. So, but that's a long, involved discussion. That doesn't mean black and white, somebody had a vaccine and had a bad reaction. Mm-hmm. Look what happened with, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan.
Right.
Grew up in say the Toronto area, and cheering for the Buffalo Bills is in my DNA. Well, you remember last year when DeMar Hamlin in that football game in Cincinnati, he got hit.
Okay? Right.
And his heart
stopped. Yeah.
Twice. Eventually saved. Well, while he's on the field, everybody's got their phone now. Okay. Everybody's got their computer and internet access in their hand. Already starting to tweet, this is because he had a COVID vaccine. It was a myocardial infection in his heart that stopped it. And that was Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted that. And the next day on Tucker Carlson's show, they had a doctor come on and talk all about this. Nothing to do with that. It was what was discovered later, because medical diagnosis takes a little time, folks, that if you get hit, and it happens with soccer players and football players, if you get hit in a helmet or a soccer ball right here in the heart, it can disrupt your heart rhythms to the point of causing it. Just it's the right force at the right time in the right place.
At the right beat, yeah.
At the right in between the beats, all these things can happen. And so that's what actually happened. But meanwhile, 10 million retweets of Marjorie Taylor Greene's "Got to investigate the vaccines. That's what's caused this death, this on field." Right during the instant happened. So it's that, it's silly putty logic.
Hold on the third one, because I want to expand on what you just said, which is such an important part when you brought the media in. Yes. I want to mention two incidences here in the United States. One that could have had national implications on who win election, et cetera. The birther movement in America. It didn't matter where Obama was born, given that his mother was an American. But the media ran away with the Trump story on birther, in as much as all they needed to say his mother was a natural born American. It doesn't matter where he was born, he would be a natural born American. That would have been the end of the case. Instead, it moved on. The other thing is when it comes to Canada and Medicare, the state of Medicare in Canada. Canada has, compared to the United States, great healthcare. Compared to the United States, their biggest issue has always been, in Canada, you wait longer for a hip replacement. Turns out here in the United States, we have private healthcare, but given that it's all privatized and you have to move things around, you still have to wait a hell of a long time for most Americans to see a specialist. No different than than let's say, actually quite a bit worse, because it costs you a lot more here in the United States. Just needed to do that interjection. Continue, please.
Well, and and Canada's taxes rates are higher.
They're comparable.
We're comparable. When you actually get down to how much money we end up in the end of the day, you have lower income tax rates in the United States. Some states have no income tax at all, et cetera. But guess what? They have higher sales taxes.
Right.
And you're paying for it in other ways. And America has some of the highest costs of healthcare per capita in the world.
Yes. With
the worst outcomes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And is our healthcare system perfect? Again, nothing's perfect unless we go back to this binary thinking. It's right or it's wrong. It's broken or it's fixed. No, the world moves forward in the gray. And how do we fix it? How do we make it better? And that's what happens with lies and misinformation. Also, they close down thought. We won't go that way because that's bad. I'll hear it listening on CNN, and people talk about Norway. And the right-wing commentators as well. They're socialists. We don't want to learn anything from them. Happiest people in the world every year.
And great healthcare. I mean, there's an American that I interviewed who moved over there, and he moved over there. His son went skiing and broke his neck. He's better. He's much improved. But it was because of the healthcare they had. He never had to worry about losing a job, never had to worry about going bankrupt. They took care of him. They took him we can do it. If we could get out of these theater of lies, if we can get out of the theater of lies, we would do well. Look, I
remember when the Obamacare was coming in, I have to say this, and they were talking about it and having discussions. And I'm saying Americans are protesting against going bankrupt for healthcare.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
And the fundamental thought that, in order you get healthcare paid for if you have a job. Right.
It's crazy.
Well, so that's linked to a job. Well, why? Why do I have to have a job to get healthcare?
Listen. Let me just say this. I mean, it is great to have somebody from outside of the country who's under these different programs be able to say this. But, I've been having so much fun talking to you that we've actually let time go by. So here's what I'm going to ask you, Ted. First of all, I'm going to ask you to tell me whatever you want that I should have asked you that I didn't, about your book, about anything, so that we can close out. But more importantly, tell me what you see as a solutions to try to get around this theater of lies, if you will.
Okay. Well, using the theater of lies metaphor, the lie producers are not going to stop. It works. It has worked for hundreds of years, and it's only getting more so. So the solution is to become a better audience. Okay, a more critical audience. The fundamental way to take care of this is to pause, take a step back and be curious. Okay. Ask the question, why are they telling me this? What are their motivations? Okay. It's what I see in the United States that I wrote about in Newsweek about that, there's a conservative movement in the States, in the United States, and national conservatives or common good conservatives or Christian conservatives that are embracing Donald Trump's lies, not because they believe him, but because he will set the ground for them to have their conservative country or independent states, whatever it ends up being, putting democracy back on the table. That people, you've got to spend time to understand not just that people are lying to you, but understand the why of the lies, because they're done with purpose. And once you get into their motivations, you can sort of check that emotional resonance pack for just a bit. What I ask people to do, I said it's very easy and yet very hard. Number one is park your biases, park your ideologies. Just take them and just park them, put them to the side. Say, don't worry, they're safe. They're still there. They're not running away. You can have them back whenever you want. But just for a second, park them. Okay. Ask yourself the question, what if the other side is right? What do I have to know that maybe the other side of this argument has that I don't know? Okay. Park that for a second, take that pause and be curious. Because between your curiosity and your imagination and that kind of diligence, you become a better audience member. And then you have what I call the third C. First of all, you got to care that you're being lied to. Secondly, you got to be curious. And finally, you have to have the courage to stand up and say, I don't think it's that way, because you're going to get hit hard back. But courage is important. So that's in a couple of sentences, what the book is about is to help people, give you the tools both as individuals, organizations, because there's companies and organizations that are spreading lies and misinformation. They don't even know it because they believe the lies they're telling. Yeah. I'll go back. I don't know how much time I got left, but the chocolate industry. Every chocolate bar you buy now, at a mainstream chocolate, says like cocoa for good or sustainable cocoa, all these programs. Well, guess what? The people who are growing the cocoa make $3 a day.
Mm-hmm.
They can't afford to buy rice from what they sell the cocoa for to feed their families. So, I'm sorry, Nestle and Roundtree and Mars, it's not sustainable. Okay. That's not, you're fooling yourself or you're fooling them. Now they've got to think of fair trade cocoa, which is higher price, et cetera. We go, well, that's 1% of the market. But that's an area where I go, that's a problem. They need to tell people that our sustainable cocoa programs aren't working. We need you to help us, consumer, and let's work together to make sure the folks in Guinea who are growing our cocoa can have a good life and educate their children. The point of the matter is you've got to park your biases. Corporations have to look to themselves and say, what misinformation are we putting out there? Let's look at ourselves. And as a society, we have to raise a generation of curious children who are encouraged to have lifelong learning. So our school system is set up to create workers, not create thinkers. Mm-hmm. But here's the problem. I go back just to the people who say, well, no, we have to create these workers. When the child going into kindergarten today comes out of high school or, a 4-year college, none of us know what the labor environment's going to be and the workforce needs are going to be 13, 15, 16 years from now. None of us know. Let's just go back 16 years. Between the internet and social media and digital media and computer technology, we weren't training our kids then to do that. You need to train thinkers who are able to adapt into these new environments. So that's important. If you're trying to raise workers, you can't do it the way you're doing it. You got to raise thinkers. And thinkers, okay, let's go back to that tree of knowledge.
Right.
That's what the authority doesn't want. Exactly. Donald Trump doesn't want people to think.
Exactly.
And doesn't want Ron DeSantis, no debates on critical race theory. Dumb title. dumb title. Whoever came up with critical race theory, it was obviously an academic, and then other people took it on and used it. Come up with a better name. It's like when the left took on the term woke. Good black term about being, black slang about being a black children, being aware that when you're around police, be aware that they're going to treat you differently. But, the left took it and made it their own. And then, of course, it was easy because since nobody knew what woke really means,
we could stamp the meaning. Yeah.
We could stamp the meaning and say, I'm anti-woke. Now it's woke, anti-woke, and nobody knows what any of it means. Okay. Yeah. We get back into labels rather than reality. So that's what education could do, curiosity can do. And I think the last thing is if somebody ever gives you a term, a word that you don't understand, that you have to look up. First of all, it's good you're looking it up. You're curious. Yeah. Like somebody talked about illiberalism and, the term common sense, conservatism. I have to look these things up because I don't talk with my friends and my associates and my colleagues and my clients. Yeah. These terms. If I've got to go look it up, somebody's trying to get something by me. Okay. Sure. And the use of language is a very powerful tool to manipulate people. Well, that's my business. Though I believe I'm trying to persuade people for good and for them to be independent thinkers, not ideological on either side. Ideology is a killer of curiosity. And that's why I promote this message to all sides of the argument.
Ted Griffith, author of Theater of Lies. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Appreciate it. I look forward to hearing the broadcast.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.